I reached out to you. I checked in November of 2023. And it
Yeah.
was just like a LinkedIn, hey man,
Yeah.
checking in. And I didn't hear back from you
Yeah.
till like a month ago.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, my initial response is like, when I see this guy, I go, no, I'm like, fuck him.
Yeah.
Like,
What an asshole,
it's like
right?
2.5 years later. But
Yeah.
talk to me, man. So
Yeah.
like this like 2.5 years ago, you
Yeah.
were not doing well, man.
No. So at that time, October, so October of 2023, September of 2023 is when I was dealing with what they call phlebitis, viral phlebitis and impact phlebitis. Okay. So that means someone your veins raised on a leg and someone bumped into it, or you bumped into it, or you slammed the car door on it or something, and it's swelling from the inside out.
Mm.
There's a viral phlebitis in your veins where the veins swell by themselves and
Eesh.
there's an infection in them.
Right.
And it's excruciating, right? It's very, very painful. So in the midst of all of this, I
So
have
this you got this going on.
yeah, I got this going on. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm ignoring it, push through, suck it up.
Right.
I'm still doing the recruiting. I used to recruit for a company called Weaver Partners, and I was recruiting people in retirement services in the financial services industry. A lot of moving parts, very fast moving gig. And I was ignoring everything.
Mm.
And I wasn't calling in sick. I just wasn't following their metrics. I was in survival. So I was like, I got to do it my way.
Right.
I got to get the piece of paper. I got to close the deals and I'm going to do it. So their way is you need to be at 20 calls a day, 30 calls a day, whatever it is. Here's your outreach, all of those things. I wasn't doing those metrics. I was kind of using like a sniper rifle and saying, okay, here's a direct match. I'm going to get this person. I'm going to get this person to move and I'm going to close this deal.
Right.
All of this was happening then, right? So in September, the bosses finally got wind of my metrics. They finally got wind of everything that was going on. And through all of this excruciating pain that I was in, my kids weren't spending any time with me because I was bedridden
Hmm.
for the most part. And yeah, they'll come in, they'll see you, but kids are active. They're not going to lay next to
Right.
dad.
Right.
They're running around, they're hanging out with their friends, they're doing all that stuff. So I missed a lot of time with them,
Right.
right? Well, I was pushing through the pain, ignored it. There was a festival in the local area that I live in,
Yeah.
and I just said, "Screw it." I said, Lindsay's my wife." I
Yeah.
said, "We're taking the kids.
Yeah.
Let's go." I packed my legs with ice packs, you know,
Dude.
the stirrup straps, wrapped it, all of that.
Yeah.
Let's go. Charge. And they had a geolocator on one of the apps that they used on the phone system that we use. So ever since 2020, there was a COVID, because of COVID, the
Sure.
offices, you're not going in the office, right? So
Gotcha.
it was like you have your autonomy, you can stay at home and do your thing. Well, they track my geolocator and they're like, "Hey, you must not be too hurt because you're at a fair." Right?
Yeah, man.
So
Oh.
yeah. So basically what happened, I have a conversation with the partners. It did not go well.
Right.
It was a shit sandwich that I could have eaten, but I don't know. Have you ever experienced like that pain where you can't think?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So try to be self-controlled.
Nah, man, you're all emotional.
Correct.
You're
And
all
I
emotional.
and I exploded in
Right.
the conversation. And
Yeah.
it got to me yelling at them. And at the end of all this, they said, "Hey, you know what? Stay home, get better. We're not gonna put a conflict with the unemployment." I said, "Okay, no problem. That's great." Moving on from that, I
They
was still
let you go.
they let me go. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then so moving on from that, I was still getting procedures done because of the varicose veins that I had.
Mm.
And you and I talked about this, and I wanted to make sure that this was out on the podcast because remember we had talked about me being diagnosed with PTSD back in 2009 and all of those things.
Right.
One of the coping mechanisms that I used, because it was kind of like the hot thing at the time, was I was microdosing marijuana.
Okay.
I was microdosing edibles. I microdose, I tried it a couple different ways. I said, I don't want to smoke it. I don't want to vape it. Let's do
Right.
the healthiest option. Let's get a low sugar edible option
Right.
and let's go
And
that route.
and because in theory that would hopefully reduce inflammation and other things, right?
That's what we were looking at. It was supposedly supposed to reduce inflammation. It was supposedly supposed to reduce hypervigilance. It was supposed to kind of give yourself a break with the fast acting sympathetic nervous system. And that's a big fancy word for just calling somebody a hothead or
Right.
somebody with a quick fuse. It's supposed to numb those areas that produce that reaction.
Okay.
And so really what happened was I was taking it, I was numbing it, but I had to take such a higher dose to numb the fast acting nervous system and to numb the pain. Basically, what happened was these edibles create varicosities. So if you have veins in your legs and your legs are rising, or you have circulation issues
Hmm.
and you're smoking weed or you're vaping or you're taking an edible, basically what it does, I can't remember the percentage, but you can go out there. There's science that has actually proven this.
Mm.
It will raise the percentage of you getting issues with varicose veins
Huh.
and other issues internally
Right.
just by taking that, just by
Oh wow.
ingesting that stuff.
So you're doing that in an attempt to address some PTS issues and some inflammation issues, and it's actually driving the issues that you had with your circulation.
That's 100%.
Hmm,
Yep. So
that's
then
crazy.
I go for a procedure that following week. There was a big, massive cluster vein that was on the top of my thigh that went all the way down to where my knee is. And basically, this cluster vein was creating a lot of issues. So they said, we're going to do a pretty routine, seamless procedure called the venous seal procedure.
Mm,
I ended up getting a blood clot in my great saphenous vein. And for the listener or for yourself,
yeah.
the great saphenous vein is that great big tree vein that every other vein kind of branches off,
Okay.
right? It's the main hallway to your heart.
Oh wow. That's not good.
It's not good whatsoever. And I had a 6.5 inch blood clot. So then we got the hospitalization, we got all that stuff. Well, keep in mind, remember I told you I was sedentary?
Yeah.
Then I got viral pneumonia
Dude.
because I had a collapsed lung.
Hmm.
Didn't realize I had a collapsed lung.
Dude, you're falling apart.
I was falling apart. The ship was going down big time.
Yeah.
So that November, I just thought that I was dealing with like flu-like symptoms and I had a blood clot. That December is when the ship really went down and my oxygen saturation started going.
What was so that oxygen saturation? I remember this from a study that was done. Um, if you get to 60, you're dead.
Yeah. So I was to give you an idea, I can't remember exactly what the metrics were, but
The number, yeah.
when the first responders came to the house to get me out of the house and rush me to the hospital, I was on a 60 to 80% oxygen push.
Yeah. Yeah, you normally I think you're supposed to be around 94, 95, 96%
Yeah.
saturation.
Mine was down probably about 85 at the
Right.
time that the ambulance came.
Nice. Holy smokes.
And basically what had been realized is the amount of time that the saturation was occurring and that deprivation was occurring, I lost conscious awareness.
Hmm.
I lost, I don't know how many brain cells, I don't, but
Right, yeah, no, but there was a lack of oxygen and
totally.
you were you, it's that added to the laundry list of issues that you were having.
Yes. And so I forgot, John, stuff like this. Like I forgot where my wife worked. My wife owns a spa in the town that I live in. We live in Yorkville. She owns a spa, and I forgot where she worked. I forgot
Hmm.
where the public library was.
Right.
I forgot where my kids went to school. And I was barely fun. I was functional. Like I could still go to the bathroom, I could still eat
Right.
and
Right. Right.
that stuff. But it was a very dull, and it was a very like I was not with it whatsoever.
Right. That's
So
crazy.
yeah, so I spent 16 days in the hospital non-consecutively. So I went home. They thought that they had everything figured out, and then I got rushed back to the hospital. And basically, what happened was because of the collapsed lung, because of the amount of inflammation that was in my system, the inflammation went to my lungs. And so, what that means is, have you ever heard of cytokines?
I have not.
All right, so cytokines are inflammatory markers. If you guys want to learn a little bit more about that, Dr. Casey Means talks about it in her book, Good Energy.
Okay.
And so cytokines, think about a stove, John. When you turn the stove on, flames come up.
Yeah.
You get that heat coming off. All
Yeah.
right. That's a pro-inflammatory cytokine. So if I have let's say I get I'm doing some work in my backyard. I get a splinter in my thumb. Okay. I want that pro-inflammatory cytokine to kick the heat up, to pus it up, to push that sliver to the surface.
Okay.
What'll happen is our body is very intelligent. Our internal systems are very intelligent. So what it'll say is it will skip steps and it will say, "Hey, guess what? He needs that gas brought on. He needs that flame, that pro-inflammatory so much. Let's just shut off the de-inflammatory. Let's inflame the entire system."
Mm.
Well, when that happens, think about it. When we talk about cancer, when we talk about sickness, when we talk about illness, Dr. Mark Hyman and some of the other, I would say holistically minded doctors, when they're talking about the root of cancer, what is the root of cancer? Inflammation.
Hmm.
The root of sickness and the root of cancer is inflammation. Okay. And I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking. So you caught me
No,
off.
this is no.
Okay.
I got a bunch of questions, so I'll keep
Okay.
rolling, bro.
Okay, so when we're talking about these cytokines will shut off the flames. It will shut off the de-inflammatory and just go pro-inflammatory. Well, my entire system was so inflamed that it became a very tedious environment.
Mm.
So the last time that I left the hospital, I connected with the pulmonologist. There were specialists upon specialists.
Yeah.
We're going to get you this. You get stuck with this up this, and all of that stuff. I finally connected with the pulmonologist, this really cool Indian dude, deep Indian accent. And he's like, I got to tell you what, man, you're fucked right now.
Oh.
Do you want to get out of the hospital? And it's just me and him in the room.
Yeah.
My wife
Yeah.
just left. And he's like, do you want to get out of the hospital? I said, yeah. What's it going to take? He's like, you have to have a perfectly humid room. You got to have perfect temperature. If it's too humid, you're coming back to the hospital. If it's too dry, you're coming back to the hospital. You have to hydrate at a level that is staggering. If
Mm.
you don't hydrate, you're coming back to the hospital. Your salt has to be perfect. Too much salt, too much dehydration, you're coming back to me.
Mm.
Your stress, if you can't get to your stress and handle your stress, you'll be back in the hospital. I had to have a perfect, almost like an incubator, is what
Huh.
we had to create at home.
Wow.
And it had to stay like that. Gosh, I want to say it was about 2 months we had to keep it that way.
No kidding.
And then little by little, I started coming back.
Right.
But what the scariest thing for anybody that has dealt with, your lobe shutting down or any of that stuff, when you're wheezing on your inhale and your exhale,
Mm.
that's when all hell breaks loose. So people are like, man, I exhaled. I'm feeling a little bit of wheezy. Oh man, that's kind of rough. But when you wheeze, bringing it in and you wheeze, bringing it out, your breath can't keep up with your
Right.
body. can't catch your breath.
Huh.
And
Well,
it
that's
can,
because you still got that collapsed lung, right?
that's correct. It was the lower lobe that was completely full. So they're
Hmm.
trying to drain the fluid, get the fluid out. And so that's that's my long-winded way, not to excuse myself, but that's how I came back to you hat in hand to
Oh yeah,
say,
no.
hey,
And Jay,
John,
that's crazy. So
it was nuts.
so why are we? So why are we talking today, bro?
Well, we're talking today because, the first responder community has been oversimplified and overgeneralized when it comes to victimization, when it comes to, and John, we've talked about this. I use PTSD from the standpoint of I was taught the disordered thinking aspect of the PTSD. So that's how I connect with it. I don't connect with it from the disorder. I connected with it from the disorganized thinking pattern. So that's how I use it. But I mean no
Gotcha.
disrespect to anybody that call it PTS or post traumatic
Yeah,
injury.
it's all semantics, bro. I mean, if people are going to get hung up on that, fuck them. I mean,
Okay.
it's. I appreciate you trying to clarify that, but um, no need. Continue, brother.
Okay. So basically, what I have been able to learn is that what we believe is resilience is psychological resilience. And it's not the internal systems resilience, the internal structure in our body, the subcortical stuff, the subconscious stuff, the stuff beyond our conscious thought that, everybody talks about that vagus nerve, Vegas this,
Right.
Vegas
Yeah.
that, right? You've got a hack here and a hack there. Fuck that. The vagus nerve is the biggest tattletale because it is lodged in our brainstem, which is the back of our brain,
Hmm.
where it basically says via impulses, emotional impulses, and the felt sense of the body. What is the temperature of the body? What are the is it moist? Is it damp? Is there pressure? Is there pain? It takes that information with emotions and it says threat or safe.
Okay.
And until we speak the language of our survival brain, which is the autonomic nervous system, the brainstem,
Are we
that's
talking about fight, flight, or freeze right now?
yes. Yeah. So we're talking about the system that brings on fight, flight,
Understood.
freeze.
Okay.
And
So
now, go
if
ahead.
can
Sorry.
I so we're talking with you because you've uncovered something as a layman, like not as
Correct.
a professionally trained doctor. You're just a guy who's gone through some things, has really educated himself, and
Yes.
has come up with some ways. We're talking about getting our physiology right so it helps us regulate our nervous system. No?
That's exactly correct, John.
Okay.
And to piggyback on that,
Yeah.
it actually pisses me off when someone says that they're traumatized. And it doesn't piss me off when at them, it pisses me off because that is not trauma. Okay. People talk about trauma and they don't understand that it is not the event, it is how the body stores the information from the event, how
Mm,
it stores the emotions, how it stores the sensations, and how it replicates it to keep us safe on a day in, day out, moment to moment basis.
okay.
And so when we don't learn the tools of resiliency, how to stabilize our nervous system, how to speak the language of our survival brain, what happens is our system says, he can't hear me. I have to be louder. The more loud that we have to be internally, the less resilient we are to chronic stress or to events. And then it gets stored as trauma.
And is that, can I jump ahead a little bit? Is
Please.
that where you talk about that allostatic overload?
So Dr. Bruce McEwen, he was a neuroendocrinologist. You can look that up another time. But
Yeah, no, I,
but when we talk about neuroscience, John, we're not just talking about neuropsychology. I mean, we are talking about Dr. Sapolsky, neurobiology. We're talking about these geniuses, these scientific geniuses realized that they have to go beyond psychology and they have to get into the human body system. So we're pulling biology, physiology, and all of those sciences of the typical body system, and we're taking it to the science of the brain.
Okay.
So these geniuses were able to connect with, Dr. Bruce McEwen came with allostatic load. Okay. So before we get to that,
Yes.
does it make sense to you when I say the front part of the brain, the thinking brain, and our survival brain? If I give you those departments more scientific, would you like that, or do you want me to
I
give it?
like I like prefrontal cortex,
Okay.
thinking
Okay.
thinking part of the brain,
Okay.
amygdala,
Okay.
emotional,
That's
and
fine.
like that's
Okay.
those two areas I'm familiar with.
And I know you are, but I also want to make sure that I'll say it, but I'm also gonna dull
Yeah,
it
please
down
do.
because we're not
I want the
scientists.
listener to be able to grasp what you're saying.
Right. So when we're talking about the prefrontal cortex, okay, specifically the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, okay, which is just a subdomain in the prefrontal cortex, there are scientists that have been able to prove and find that that is the emotional epicenter, okay? So when we have an emotion, and I learned this through Doug Knoll's work. Doug taught me how to master affect labeling, which I can get into.
Okay.
So Doug taught me that when we have a negative emotion, let's think about a negative emotion: anger, disrespect, fear, shame,
Sure.
sadness, abandonment. Okay. Any of the emotions that would fit in those file cabinets,
Hmm.
when they're not recognized and they're not processed. Now, here's the trick. A person might not know they're having those emotions. It could still be in their subconscious.
Okay.
Okay. So whether we're consciously having it or we're unconsciously having it, when we don't pick it up and we don't acknowledge it, it goes to the amygdala. And the amygdala runs on both sides. There's one on this side and one on this side, left side, right side. And so once the amygdala takes it, then it's going to our survival brain. And now there's a common misconception. The thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, and your survival brain are always on.
Okay.
Okay. But when the negative output starts, and John, it's as simple as saying, you know what? I should have fucking done that. Damn it. Shame. You know what? I got to get my shit together. I'm fucking this world up. Rejection.
Hmm.
When we do this to ourselves,
Mhm.
the amygdala takes it, it goes straight to the back of our brain, and the survival system says, hey, it's time for me to play. And now that stress activation is going to be introduced with some hormones. It's going to be introduced maybe with some past memories or some past emotions, maybe some past impulses. It's going to keep it on the rise. It doesn't mean that you can't function with your thinking brain. People
Okay.
think very, very well in high stress scenarios. Think about yourself. Think about the work in the various positions. I mean, just reading your book, the canine, SWAT, being a sergeant, doing being in the leadership position, being as an individual contributor to a team, and then being a leader of a team. You've worn many, many hats
Right.
in high stress, high conflict scenarios, or seemingly high stress, high conflict
Sure.
scenarios. For the outside, I'm not saying it was stressful for you, but maybe for the outside world looking in, they might be like, holy shit, that must have been a stressful situation.
Sure. Of course.
Okay. So what I'm getting at is when we don't recognize these emotions. So for example, in your book, you talk about being in the alley with that Jamaican individual and things go awry.
Hmm.
Okay. There's emotions, regardless of your output, that have been stored in your survival system via that event. Okay. When there's a matching of those emotions, a person is either going to get an image, maybe a flashback, or their system is just going to be tense. It's actually from my experience, it's almost it's almost a blessing for me to have the flashbacks because I can at least track, okay, this is where my brain is. These are the emotions. This is what is happening. My shit's going berserk right now because it thinks it's at this place in
Hmm.
this event. Someone
So
that
you
does,
have that awareness though.
well, because I've trained on
You've
it.
got that, but most people don't have that awareness, right?
Right, right. So their brain and
Right.
their body are just like, oh, I'm back in this place. Well, you're not back in this place,
They're not, right? Yeah.
but they think that they are. And so when we can get to those pesky loud emotions and we can start to recognize them, that shit goes down. So the next time the flashback comes, it's not as powerful.
Hmm.
And so affect labeling flashbacks actually reduces the power of the flashbacks. But going back into just willy nilly, I'm doing my typical day, I'm stressed out. When they don't call out those emotions just keep smoldering like a volcano.
And when you say call them out, so is that something? How does one do that? Do they is it merely acknowledging what they're feeling, or how does somebody go about getting a handle on that?
Great question. The best way that I was shown via Doug Knowles is the ability to recognize emotions that don't annoy you, piss you off, or make you be like, okay, we're big dealing at this, but I'm not some fucking pansy that can't handle this. It's being able to recognize emotions, label these emotions in their specific category,
Right.
and with practice and training, they can acknowledge them with themselves without an eye roll. So, for example, maybe if I came to you and I said, John, let's say you're pissed off, John,
Okay.
and I visibly can see that you're pissed off because I was able to read.
Yeah, I'm carrying a lot of tension. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm short with my words. Whatever.
yeah, exactly. I'm ignoring what you're saying. I'm listening to your body. I'm listening to the language that you're using and your tone of voice.
Mhm.
Okay. And I'm repeating back to you the emotion of your anger. So let's say you're pissed off. Let's say that you choose, rather than say I'm mad or I'm angry or I'm frustrated or I'm enraged,
Yeah.
let's say that you say, you know what, for John, John's pissed off.
Right.
And if I say to John, hey, John, you're really pissed right now. This really freaking frustrates you. You feel disrespected. You don't feel supported. And you know what? It makes you feel a little anxious
Hmm.
and a little worried and concerned. Now, here's the interesting thing, whether you're consciously having those emotions or it's in your subconscious, telling them, recognizing them. And it takes a little practice. It doesn't
Right.
come just in a millisecond. You got to
Right.
work at it a little bit. It makes a person less reactive. It makes a person less explosive when the application does not require it. It's very important that we make that distinction. I am not a first responder. I've never been a first responder,
Right.
but I've worked with first responders that were freezing when they were going up a ladder. And I said, I noticed that there was a little bit of pause. What if you said to yourself, rather than heel toe, hand, foot, hand, foot, like they were trained? I said, what if you said right at that point, God, I'm tense right now and I'm feeling anxious. Yeah, I'm feeling kind of nervous right now. As you are moving it forward, could
Hmm.
you try that for me on this next evolution? John, guess what happened? He goes up the ladder, he goes over the ladder, he goes down the ladder, and it was safe. It was successful. He looked at me and he said, I didn't freeze. I said, yeah, you didn't freeze because you just told your body, hey, I got this.
Right.
I'm in the driver's seat now.
This is what I'm feeling. You kind of you named it, so to speak.
Yeah.
And huh. And so acknowledging it, right, and being able to, I don't want to say embrace it, right, but just but not run from it.
Yeah. Hey,
That emotion.
yeah. Wow. Man, my face is beat red right now. Holy shit. My ears are red too. I'm pretty I'm pretty pissed off. My shoulders are tight.
Right.
And getting to that level of body awareness, that's the stuff that I teach. So when we
Okay.
talk about teaching the language of the survival brain, well, there's the two. It is the felt sense, temperature, moisture, pressure, pain, because we got to remember something. The survival brain, it doesn't have eyes or ears. So everything is driven by impulses. Everything is driven by electrical impulses that go to every organ in the body, every tissue in the body. Well, have you ever heard of someone talking about their fascia? The fascia is the tissues that hold your organs together.
Okay.
It's been shown that that's where trauma stores. It's been shown that when someone has a startle response, it's because the stored energy of trauma is stuck in certain areas of their body. I don't know if you've ever done any mindfulness work with a trauma or anything where, hey, what does your shoulder feel
With the
like? Or what?
tapping and stuff, and
Yeah, it could be tapping, it could be any of that stuff. But the whole point is there's storage in specific areas from some specific events.
right.
And then this vagus nerve can almost be a pain in the ass, but it's really cool because it spots out any inconsistency and it goes all the way down to your butt. And then it hyperdrives that communication of any impulses that are inconsistent, whether they're emotional or the felt sense, back up to your brain to say, oh, wait, do we need to recategorize this and put this up against the file cabinet of stuff that happened?
And is that where it ends up putting it into that either that sympathetic, parasympathetic? That's where it gets categorized.
Well, essentially, what it'll do is it'll say, hey, you remember when this happened? Do you remember when this happened? And for some people, they'll get a visualization or they will get a felt sense experience
Mm-hmm.
of something, a high event that overwhelmed their system in the past.
Okay.
Call it a flashback, right? But
And
not
that's
everybody that,
so that's when the body gets that signal or fight, flight, or freeze. Then
well, so I don't want to differentiate when exactly that comes on. I
uh-huh.
believe that the signal comes on before the image. I believe that the fight or flight comes on before the image. Okay. Because think about this. If we're if we're in a fight or flight,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that is a healthy state to be in. If the situation is required,
Of course,
it's
one
when
hundred
we're in a
percent.
fight or flight for our bank accounts, or when we're in a fight or flight because we just watched a scary movie and then our daughter does something or our wife does something and fight or flight just keeps happening and it doesn't go back to the baseline.
Right.
So when we talk about fight or flight or we talk about the freeze, did you know that there's two freezes?
No.
There's a dorsal vagal shutdown, okay,
Okay.
which is almost like your body's like a wet noodle and maybe you faint, maybe you just completely fall out, but you lose muscle tension, you lose the physical sensations in your body, and it's all for regulation of your heart rate,
Okay.
all for oxygenating your system through something crazy, right? It's a storage capacity, and it's basically saying, hey, not quite the end of the world, but we're in a fucking hurricane right now. Batten down the hatches and chill out until this shit passes. And that's for whatever event that it is.
Okay.
The other sympathetic freeze is just that. It comes out of fight. Or fight or flight. It is a hard adrenaline based charge where the body is tight, the body is in full system go, and then there's a pause. And the pause comes internally. It does not come external. It comes internally.
Hmm.
So the person is like charged and ready to rock, and they got no mobility. They have no movement. Okay. In that amount of time, that can be massive energy that gets stored in our body, that gets stored in our tissues, that gets stored in our musculoskeletal system. The number one predictor currently to PTS, PTSD, post traumatic injury, whatever we're calling it, is an unprocessed dorsal vagal shutdown, an unprocessed dorsal vagal freeze. But the sympathetic high charged freeze eats away at the system, creates chronic stress, and it can also mirror the breakdown of your human system, the breakdown of the system. It will chip away, it will eat at the system. Because what is something that you guys have at your core psychology, at your heart, at your depth? When there's a problem, where do you go?
Yeah, you fix it. You go towards it.
You go towards it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what is happening is, and you could read the book. Daniel Siegel wrote a book about the window of tolerance, and Dr. Liz Stanley, she wrote the book Widen the Window. Dr. Liz Stanley has been really successful with working with the soldiers, special operations in Ukraine, and getting them and their families, teaching them how to stabilize their nervous system so the entire community is just not completely ripped apart.
Gotcha.
And there's something to come back to. But she gets into the stress inoculation training and how to stabilize your nervous system through stress inoculation training and why do you do stuff like that, so on and so forth. But my whole focus is when the human body system has not had the repetitions of stabilizing their nervous system and they go through the academy or they go through all of these stressful scenarios that are meant to stress them out,
Right.
get them to prepare. What has been found through the scientists like Dr. Stanley, Peter Levine, Pat Ogden, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, is that the system actually is more tuned up to freeze.
Hmm.
And the reason why is because that activity doesn't get pronounced. That information of those stress events gets stored into the system. Okay. They don't get pronounced, they get stored into the system. And it's as simple as, have you ever heard the word interoception to get neuroception?
No, never. No.
Okay, so interoception is a big word, comes from Dr. Stephen Porges, and all of that means interoception to get neuroception. It's the internal system, our safety mechanism, our
Mhm.
survival brain saying, hey, you recognize the emotions that you're having and you recognize how your body feels in this moment. You see us, you hear all the messages. We're safe. It will literally turn on the safe or danger button based on our connection with it.
Hmm.
So what happens is, think about the hard charger that sucks it up, that drives on, fuck your emotions, fuck your feelings, fuck all that shit. They're actually more prone, if they're living in hypervigilance cycles or stress cycles that are continuum, they're actually more prone to freeze.
Hmm. Well, you said something that I had, it kind of made a question pop up in my mind, Jay.
Sure.
That hypervigilant cycle.
Mhm.
Um, I and forgive me, I read somewhere that we need almost like a day and a half to come back to normal from being in a situation like that we're extremely hyper vigilant. And what ends up happening is because we don't have that break from being exposed again to
Sure.
another high stress, so you never get that 24 hours 48 hours to deal with that first incident that brought on that hypervigilance.
Mhm.
And so because your work cycle and your calls for service and the overexposure to critical incidents, that you end up always being technically in a hypervigilant state, whether you want to or not, just because there isn't that time, I'm going to say, to decompress or to process those feelings, emotions, senses, sights, smells, tastes. So it's almost by default we're prone to, whether we name it or not, we don't we're not given the time band that the scientists and the doctors say is ideal to come back to this normal, I guess I want to say, rest and digest, if that's if I can say that without stepping out of bounds. Does anything I just said make any sense?
Well, it completely does, John, because I think first and foremost I have to clarify when it comes to the time frame, when it comes to the operational procedures, when it comes to, the structure of leadership and everything that you guys experience on the job. Um, I'm not versed in that. So I don't want to be the one to speak to that in any case of the words of what time breaks the hypervigilance cycle on the job. But what I can do is I can say someone that lives with his own experience with hypervigilance, it was one of my main symptomatologies of the PTSD that I deal with, is when I start to find myself getting into a hypervigilance cycle, or my wife does, one of the things that is immediate focus is go reset.
Okay.
And
So
so,
for the listener, Jay,
mhm, mhm,
because they don't hypervigilance is their normal.
correct,
That's become their new baseline. That's
correct.
just so how do we how do we recognize that we're in a hypervigilant state? And more importantly, Jay, what are some things that you can share with our listeners that they can do once they go, hey, you know what? I can't show up home. I can't walk through the door like this.
Mhm,
I'm a fucking lunatic right now.
yep.
What's some things that we can do, at least in the short term, knowing that, we don't get fixed overnight, that there's a learning curve and there's a process to everything. But what are some things that we can do to help regulate our nervous system so we can, I want to say, maybe break that hypervigilant cycle?
Well, John, that's a great question. And I'm going to be a little tongue in cheek for a minute. And I'm going to say, hire me, bring
Yeah,
me
yeah.
in, and let me give you guys a baseline, teach you how to stabilize your nervous systems, because all of the psychology, all of the can do and positivity, and John, you're the compass. You're the individual that has the ability to be the compass of the individual that gets back to a baseline. If they don't come back to the baseline, the compass is irrelevant.
Right. I mean,
And
do you think part of the problem is with our people is that we don't know what baseline is? So
I
it's
think,
it's it's difficult for us to get back to something that we're not sure of.
well, I would say that many of the individuals that I've spoken with
Yeah.
in depth about this, that are first responders,
Yeah.
do they have, and I'm not making a generalization, I'm saying the individuals that I've spoken with,
Sure, of course.
they have a issue with emotions. They do not, they do not connect, and they feel that they are being, and I'm speaking to the men here. I haven't spoke to many of the women about it, but I'm speaking about the men that I've spoken to.
Yeah.
They feel like it's a demasculation, that you're making me a pussy that I'm not. You're making me feel like a victim for a job that I absolutely love. You're doing all these things and I don't need it. And ultimately, here's what I want to say.
So what? So them acknowledging the emotion is the obstacle.
Acknowledging the emotion is the obstacle, and then acknowledging the felt sense of the body is the obstacle, because people look at there and like, this is some really complicated scientific, all this bullshit. You
Mm,
can't tell me it's that fucking simple.
mm.
So it's almost like an eye roll, like, no, this is bullshit.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we end up rolling our eyes to initially, and then when when somebody reports back that, hey, you know, try this, give this a shot, it
Yeah.
worked for me,
Yeah.
then then we seem to move the needle a little bit.
Well, John, I did I call it an after shift reset. Okay. I actually did a recording, and I'll share that recording with you. And if you want to pass it along to some individuals and they want to
Yeah, we'll
try,
put a link in the show notes for that. That'd be great, Jay.
yeah, absolutely. The There's another part to this. If we did have issues in our past,
Mm-hmm.
connecting with our body can be really fucking overwhelming.
Mm,
Because think about it, a lot of people were taught to disconnect from their body so they could suck it up, drive on, move on,
right.
and do what they got to do. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't, in their mind, in their psychology, in their system, their body said, their front brain said, it doesn't, I don't care if someone stabbed me in the shoulder. I'm still going to do a push up.
Right.
There's individuals that have completely disconnected from their body. Well, to go back in and connect with your body, it can be
It's
super
almost,
freaking
yeah,
jarring.
it's almost like we need to, in the moment, compartmentalize and be able to disconnect, because that's when we, that the mission, the call, whatever may require that for
Mhm.
successful completion.
Mhm.
Um, but at some point we need to reconnect,
Yeah.
and we don't reconnect.
Yeah.
We stay disconnected, disassociated, we stay compartmentalized, and some of us have managed to do that for an entire career.
Yeah. So great point, John. One of the things that I was thinking about when you were saying that is the officers that I've spoke to that said, okay, Jay, we do 7/12s. Okay. All right. So you do 7/12s. Well, walk me through what that schedule looks like. All right. I wake up at 3:30 in the morning. I go hit the gym. I have breakfast. I get dressed. I go to work till, whatever time. I mean,
6 to 6, 7 to
yeah,
7. Yeah.
yeah. Just because it's a 12-hour day doesn't mean, oh, hey, we have something going on. Well, your 12 hours is up. Like,
Yeah, no, your 12-hour day is more like a 14-hour day,
right, right. So
15-hour day. Yeah.
these guys are going to bed at 8:30
Right.
to wake up at 5:30, 7 days a week.
Right.
And then they get their next week off. Okay, but what about the kids, the wife, or the partner and the kids during that during that week transition,
Right.
during that week of work?
Hmm.
So what I'm hearing from officers is, I'm not hearing the officers that are going and they're hitting the bottle or they're going to the bar. I'm hearing from the officers that they're on their fucking phone and they feel so ashamed about it and they don't know why.
Hmm.
They don't know why they need that dopamine. They don't
Ah.
know why they need these surges, or why they're eating that chocolate at the end of the night, or why they are having that drink at the end of the night when they know they got to wake up early.
Hmm.
Whatever it is, it's because their nervous system is in survival dominance. And so I look at it as a boxing rink, and I see John and me sitting on the side of the first responder. And in their corner is hope.
Hmm.
It's the prayer of St. Michael. It's the hope that we have what it takes to keep the community safe that we're serving, and
Right.
to keep ourselves and our team safe.
Right.
Okay? On the other side of it are the victimized individuals that have turned to crime and worthlessness and viciousness. And so when I talk about the nervous system stabilization, it is as simple as the fighter getting his squeeze of water or that sponge on his face or that salt pen shutting down the wound that's bleeding. So he can go back in the fight or she can go back in the fight
Right.
and do what they need to do at the best of their abilities. John, did I share with you what happened with my daughter?
No.
So my daughter, she's 5. Okay. I typically wouldn't share that, but I have a trust with you and I have a trust with your audience.
Yeah.
I don't get trust without building trust, right? So she had a tonsillectomy, which everybody was like, oh, it's no big deal. No big deal. Adenoidectomy, tonsillectomy. You know, her tonsils and her adenoids were almost touching. So, okay, we got to get it done. The kid's
Yeah.
not sleeping at night. She's having a irregular breathing pattern, snoring, all this stuff. She's 5. Okay,
Right.
let's get this shit taken care of. We researched high and low. Best person for the job, best surgeon for the job, best hospital for the job. Okay, 182 reviews. Perfect. Then I went and my wife went and talked to friends that their kids had surgery via this surgeon because I'm not trusting anybody, especially when it comes to my kids. Right? Surgery went great.
Okay.
3 days later, I hear this monotone scream. John, you're a father.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've heard a kid scream.
Right.
How about the monotone scream? That,
Right.
oh, what the fuck?
Yeah. What's that? Yeah.
I run upstairs. My
Sure.
daughter's covered in blood. My 5-year-old daughter is covered in blood. She's got blood
Oh.
all over her face. She's got blood all over her shirt, blood all over the sink. Because what had happened was there was a vessel that did not get cauterized because it was so low,
Oh.
it got missed.
Oh.
And this vessel was so small that okay, it got missed. I
Oh.
got a daughter that's covered in blood.
Yikes.
My reaction, holy fucking shit.
Yeah.
Probably not the best reaction, but I said,
No.
baby girl, I got you.
Yeah.
Come here. All right, let's do this. Let's go.
Right.
I'm not calling 911.
No.
I
Get in the
am,
car. Go.
let's get in the car. Let's go. 4.5 minutes, I was out of the house.
Right.
I got my wife in the car with her bag. My wife, she sees her little girl.
It's a mess.
Blood.
It's a crazy
It's a mess,
situation.
right? She's in the car. My daughter's in the car. I got a puke bucket that's right there. Everybody's strapped in and secured. I'm on the road and I'm going 25 miles an hour when I can, 18 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, because I don't know the severity of the situation. I got my hazards on and my head is on a swivel.
Mm.
I'm not having flashbacks. I'm not doing anything except being hyper focused on the mission.
Sure.
I passed a cop at a stoplight that I blew,
Mm-hmm.
turning into the hospital, and was fully prepared to deal with any of the repercussions and explain that after I got her in where she needed to go.
Sure.
Needed to go. All right, that was hospital number 1. Hospital number 1 was just kind of the quick, okay, if we're going to take her to where her surgeon is, which is 45 minutes away, I want to make sure that it's by ambulance if
Right.
it needs to be. Doctor, take a look at it. Let's see what we got. Okay. She says, oh, it's no big deal. We're going to, you guys can even go home and wait it out. Okay. Well, that's fucking bullshit. My daughter's
Right.
blood.
Of course, we're not doing that. Right.
We're not doing that. We're going to the hospital. We're going to the next hospital. All right. So we go to this supposedly, and I'm not going to name names here
Yeah,
because
no need to,
get me in
brother.
trouble, but we go to this supposedly like pediatric specialized, like they get it. They got the painting on the walls of the kids and all that stuff.
Gotcha.
This male nurse comes in, and the first thing he says to my daughter is, "Hi, friend." Well, someone that was molested, like myself, I don't know. I didn't like the fact that he was coming in and saying, "Can we be friends?"
Mm.
I wanted to stab him in the jugular with the needle that he
Yeah.
was trying to get an IV on my daughter. Okay. But guess what? I was focusing on my feet and the pressure of my feet, and I was focusing on my shoulder. So I didn't attack him. Okay. They tried to run a port a second time. Now, think of what my daughter had been through.
Mm.
She'd been through hell. Should we get an emergency surgery? Shouldn't we? We don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
The way that they drew the port was for accessibility for them, but it was in the crook of her arm, and the poor little thing was bracing like this, and she was in excruciating pain because of it. We finally connected with the surgeon, and the surgeon said, "Hey, we're going to give you guys, I think it was a mist. We're going to give you a mist. You breathe it in through the nebulizer, and basically it could be like a mist that turns into glue in the back of the throat."
Okay.
We go through this, and we are about to be released. Now, this is a blessing in disguise, so I'm not
Mm.
going to talk shit about it.
Right.
We're about to be released, and Mr. Friend comes back in, and he's pulling out the port, and he's pulling at it. I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
This is not going to work. We gotta hold this off. Do you see her bracing? And I said, can you step out the side in the hallway with me? And he goes, what's going on? I'm like, you're offended. You're a little confused right now. You got somebody trying to tell you your job. Let me tell you what I do. Okay. I
Mm.
teach human resiliency. Right now, my daughter's in a freeze. Okay. She is frozen and her little body is bracing. Okay. Her little body, and he calls the supervisor over. First thing the supervisor says is, we did not want to touch the port, like a little kid that got scolded. We did not want to touch the port. The surgeon said that we had to put in a new port, or that's what it was. They had to put it in another port.
Okay.
Okay. I said, well, you're pretty upset, and you kind of feel like you don't like being told what to do, and you're wondering what I'm gonna do. So you're unsure of me too. And she goes, yeah. I said, okay, I have a daughter that's in there that was found covered in her own blood. Can we bring this down a little bit to her level? What is something that we can give her if we're gonna do anything else with my daughter who's bracing right now
Right.
to prevent stored trauma for a 5-year-old because their resiliency is pretty much nil?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do? And the guy that likes to call my daughter his friend says, oh, you know what? We could give her the stuff up the nose. I said, oh, okay. So can we do that?
Right.
Do you think that'd be okay? They gave her the fentanyl, and it's like an intoxication, right? It took me holding her, my wife holding her, and her looking at an iPad while she's under this fentanyl for this moron to take out the port and put in a new one
Mm.
so she could be ready for surgery. Then we have anesthesia come in and scold us for giving her fentanyl because he didn't think that it was necessary. John, this is my long-winded way to say to you, if I had not, I mean, this is coming from a daughter that was bracing. My wife was holding my daughter. My daughter urinated all over my wife. My wife is covered in her own
Yeah.
blood.
Kids having a horrible time of it. Yeah.
Kid's having a horrible time, right? What is dad's job? Dad's job is to protect that kid at all costs.
Right. Right.
If I was not focused on stabilizing my nervous system prior to this event, and I was not doing little, in between, like when I sit down on a chair, how does my butt feel in that chair? Doing those little things, I would have gotten
Yeah.
arrested
You wouldn't have been in any uh state of mind to be able to help her.
at all. I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
not have been able to advocate
Right.
for her. I would have gotten arrested because I would have wanted to fight every single person that tried to touch my daughter.
Right. Right. Right.
At the very minimum, I would have screamed at the person and completely belittled them and
And it
called
would have made the situation worse for your daughter.
10 times worse.
Yeah.
10
No
times
doubt.
worse. So
Jeez.
my point to all of this, John, people called us after this event and they're just like, "Oh my God. Oh my God, you guys have been through so much. This is what trauma looks like." Now, people don't know what I do and they don't know what I know about trauma. They're just like, "Oh, you guys have
Yeah.
been so traumatized." And it makes my fucking skin crawl because what they don't realize is we got time. We got time for her little body to process this.
Right.
We got time to process emotions. There's exercises that we packed in to help stabilize beyond this. This isn't trauma for anyone, for any of us, because we went back in And we started talking about the emotions after it was safe.
Right.
We created the safe environment. We created, that explosive reactivity that she was coming from. We helped her with that.
Sure, you're not going to do all that in the moment when she's
No,
covered in blood.
no.
When she's safe, when everybody's calm, to go in and talk about the emotions and what she was feeling and why she was feeling, and taking the power that it could have over her in a negative way in the future,
Yeah.
like neutralizing it right there. So
Yeah.
it becomes a non-issue in the future.
And empower her
Hmm.
as, wow, you are so brave and you're so courageous. Do you think you might be a nurse or a surgeon?
Yeah, turn that whole situation into something that's, when she remembers it, she remembers how brave she was, and how she faced this adversity head on.
So why aren't we not doing this with first responders and their families?
Yeah, that it's, and so if we can just call it what it is, man, not pretend,
Yeah.
and then we can actually build resiliency by dealing with it. Right now, people think that you're resilient if you resilience isn't turning a blind eye.
No.
Resiliency is facing it head on.
Yeah. And what I just shared with you about my
Yeah,
daughter from your operational procedures of high speed scenarios in your vehicles and all of those different
right.
things, not bad for a non first responder to leave the
Yeah,
house in 4.5 minutes and get to the hospital within 12 minutes.
right. No,
But
and more importantly, to control yourself and your emotions so you don't end up becoming a liability.
correct.
Yeah,
And so what it is, that example, John, that example is having your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, your neocortex at the same level of dominance as your survival brain. And they build a bridge to each other, which allows you to be the operator's operator.
gotcha.
Speaking in your terms,
Yeah,
not,
no,
yeah, that allows you to have the micro focus without hypervigilance. John, I actually felt the dial system of the adrenaline go
right.
inside me. I was consciously aware of all of the things that were going on. And now, what you had originally posed was the hypervigilance. Even if a person that works, I don't know what it looks like when a person's doing 7-12 straight,
Right.
right? How about that week that they have off, if they actually have it off?
Right.
What would it look like to practice stabilizing their nervous system after they had at least a few minutes for themselves?
Right.
You know, or the officers that I've spoken to and some of the sergeants that I've spoken to, they're putting in wellness rooms
Sure.
in a lot of these departments. What if 10 minutes? I mean, once a person gets into the practice of how to stabilize their nervous system, John, you can stabilize it in 2 minutes.
How
You
do
can,
we do that, Jay?
it takes the repetition because now from your book, I was able to learn that you were a bodybuilder. Okay. Did you have the perfected bicep or did you have the perfected legs right out of the gate? You said, I'm going to be a bodybuilder.
Correct. Right.
It
It
was
took time.
repetition.
Sure.
But the challenge is we're repetitively looking at things that are a waste of fucking time. And I say that kind of curt, but also with truth. Until we stabilize the nervous system, it doesn't fucking matter.
Hmm.
Until we stabilize the nervous system, it doesn't matter should have, could have, would have. It doesn't matter what our thinking brain is trying to strategize. It doesn't matter the checkers and all the things that we're working on doing, because all of it is at a higher cost than it needs to be. And what it does is it takes that tenacity and it takes that hyper focus and it says you can only be hyper focused with hyper vigilance. And hyper vigilance costs way more fucking energy
Hmm.
than balancing your prefrontal cortex, your limbic system, your brainstem, and the entire survival system, which is your autonomic nervous system. That's your parasympathetic and your sympathetic.
Right. So give me something that I'm driving home. I know it's going to take a shit ton of reps, and I know doing anything once is not going to give me any kind of long lasting, impactful result. But the vast majority of us commute. What's one thing that I can do to start addressing some of these issues on my way home?
Okay. I don't know if you share this video, but I can at least can describe this.
Yeah, please.
Andrew Huberman talked about one aspect of this. The other part of it, I'm going to bring in something that Dr. Peter Levine talks about, and it's connected to the vagus nerve. Okay. Andrew Huberman talks about um, it's a double inhale. Okay. So the first thing that you can do is, and then you purse slip on your exhale. I purse slip a lot longer on my exhale because I just took in a hot breath. So
Okay.
I might purse slip my lips and I might push out that exhale for 10 to 15 seconds. If I'm
Longer exhale than the inhale.
longer inhale than the exhale. That's
Okay.
correct. The next thing I'll do when I'm not driving, just when I put the keys in the car, put the seatbelt on, or right before I put the seatbelt on, I'm going to look at myself in the mirror.
Okay.
Am I clenching my jaw? Is my neck tight? Okay. I'm not going to force a smile, but
Right.
what I am going to do is I'm going to put my shoulders up on my ears and then I'm going to go,
Like an over exaggerated shrug.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I've even seen it to where people will take it, and it's very powerful to do it this way. It sounds goofy, right? It sounds like
Right.
you're having an orgasm, but actually, what's happening is the vibration in your mouth, because remember, the vagus nerve fans out through the cheek. The vibration in your mouth actually tells that vagus nerve on some level to bring it down a little bit.
Hmm.
Most of us hold tension in the shoulders. Now, think about the first responder. What is the pound ratio of the bulletproof vest?
All your gear, you could be walking around with another 15, 20 pounds on you,
Okay,
depending
so
how it's loaded. Yeah.
all right. So one of the things that I was taught to focus on is tension in the neck and shoulders. You're typically going to be pushing through that tension in the neck and shoulders, and I'm sure at some point your system just becomes accustomed to it, right?
Mhm.
But just being able to lift your shoulders and then let them drop and let them be loose. I don't care if it's a centimeter.
Yeah.
Let it be dead weight. That's the start of something. That's the beginning of knowledge. That's the beginning of an awareness.
Right. That coupled with some breath work,
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
nice way to start the pro to dip your toe in the water and start taking a proactive approach to you regulating your nervous system.
Yeah. So one of the things I also wanted to share with you is when there's a lot of first responders that I talk to that, they have mastered controlled breathing. The interesting thing about a dysregulated nervous system, which means a system that has not come back to baseline, it's in a hypervigilance cycle. or it's in a stuck on fight response or a flight response, or it's in a freeze or a shutdown, or it's in a fawn, whatever it is, right? But it's not come back to a rest and relax baseline. If there's stored trauma,
Mhm.
if there's dysregulation, if you're in a chronic stress cycle, okay, is what the scientists would call it. It's just the shit's happening,
Yeah.
okay? Controlling your breath actually hides the dysregulation. So if you want to see how dysregulated your system is, and I don't recommend doing this by yourself, anything like that, become aware of your breath and don't try to change it.
Mm.
It'll make somebody crawl out of their skin. It is a very jarring, it is a very difficult thing to do. Here's the interesting thing: the body will naturally breathe on its own. When we control it, it's something, it is the baseline thing of something that we can control. So if you were to touch base with Dr. Liz Stanley's work and you were to get in to learn, for example, what her awareness of breath exercise looks like,
Yeah.
it would be a really good example for individuals how dysregulated it can really get.
So like that whole box breathing, y- y- that's that's not. Are you saying that doing that box breathing that doesn't help regulate our nervous system?
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm
What are you
saying,
saying then?
yeah, yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
confused.
What I'm saying is that will satisfy progressive muscle tension, sensing every single thing on your body, going for a walk. Um, those little things, those vagus nerve hacks that everybody talks about,
Uh-huh.
they're not going to get you out of dysregulation and a stress response cycle. The only thing that they're going to do is bring it down a little bit,
Okay.
which I'm not saying that that's a bad thing,
Understood. Understood. I
but it
gotcha.
doesn't complete the process. So the baseline, the healthy baseline, not going into allostatic load, which can lead to allostatic overload, is getting back to the place of rest and relax. And it's a true rest and relax
So
without.
it's more that there are more things that need to be done to get to that.
That's correct. Yeah,
Gotcha.
in the repetitions of the day. So for example, one of the officers, and this was on the fireside. This individual has been through some remarkable shit.
Hmm.
Remarkable shit. The shooting that took place in Aurora, a few cities away from me. He was one of the individuals that was downrange with the officers
Hmm.
when it was all going down, and um, you know, for as much as it was an invigorating experience to come home from that and then have his next door neighbor going into a full cardiac arrest,
Hmm.
it completely took him out of his comfort zone.
Sure.
He's coming into his home, his neighborhood, or excuse me, it wasn't a full cardiac arrest. The neighbor was hit by a car.
Oh wow.
The neighbor was hit by a car by a speeder that was trying to get out of the neighborhood that was lost. The cops ended up actually getting this guy, and he saw it from his dining room window.
Hmm.
After it was the week after what he just went through with this call.
Right.
And so what he said to me is, I've done the somatic experiencing. I've done the mushroom journey, and I've taken the stuff off duty, and I've done all the things that are seemingly there, and I still am dealing with this shit sandwich.
Hmm.
And what I said to him is, I know exactly what you're talking about from the standpoint of, I've gone to a mushroom retreat. I've gone to microdose marijuana, like we talked about.
Yeah.
I've done all of these different things, right? EMDR, somatic experiencing, you name it. I would have these profound experiences in that moment. And then I would get back to my life and be triggered, maybe a day or two later.
Hmm.
Just in just a complete stressed out, it all comes crashing back.
Yeah.
And so my point to him was, until you get into the reps of learning how to stabilize your nervous system. And I said to him, I said, if you don't want to do emotions, no, I don't like them. I don't buy it. I don't subscribe. Okay, great. How about you get 50% of the way? But let me say this. You deal with PTSD, right? He said, yeah. Or he called it, PTS. I said,
Hmm.
okay. Getting to these emotions, those emotions are the loudest thing in your body. So you can get to the felt sense of your body. People do yoga, people do all of these other things.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that it breaks the stress response cycle. It just gives them more mobility, more opportunity. It does more than that, but stabilize your nervous system, then do yoga.
Understood.
You know,
Yeah.
you're a power lifter or you were a power lifter. Stabilize your nervous system, go power lift.
Right.
Stabilize your nervous system afterwards so you don't stay in sympathetic activation.
Jay, if somebody wants to get in touch with you,
Sure.
they want to have you help them regulate their nervous system and really do some of the deep work that's necessary to get back to that baseline,
Mm-hmm.
not just lower that um, state of hypervigilance, but actually get back to a baseline and develop some techniques that actually are lasting. What
Mm-hmm.
how do we get in touch with you, Jay?
Well, that's kind of a funny thing, John, because, I'm kind of coming out of the cave, so to
Right.
speak. Um,
Would LinkedIn be the primary?
yeah, they can do my LinkedIn. They can do Jason at relativitynetwork.com. That's my email. For the people that you're connected to, you have my number.
Yep.
Feel free to give out my number because I know if they're coming from you, it's legit. Um, a website's going to be following all of those things.
Good.
One thing I will say is there are scientists out there. If you want to go and you want to learn the deep neuroscience and you want to get into all of that stuff, Dr. Stanley has an amazing program, mindfulness based mind fitness training. She offers online with cohorts. It's a 20-hour course.
Right.
Um, there's some stuff with somatic experiencing that I can put people in touch with that they actually have training programs. One of the ones that come to mind is crisis stabilization safety for mass crisis or individual family crisis
Hmm.
scenarios and how to work through that. I've been through all of those.
Right.
Um, so if someone wants to get deep into the guts of, the neuroendocrinology, neuroscience, Dr. Sapolsky, you can go into, I can't remember the app. I'll share it with you once I find it. But Dr. Sapolsky out of California,
Yeah.
he has videos that actually teaches neurobiology and the neurobiology of trauma that actually can talk to you about what the stress does to our internal system beyond our psychological awareness.
Okay.
So there's a ton of resources that are out there. one one little yield, one little caution to the wind.
Yeah.
When you're listening to TikTok or Instagram or you're getting a sound bite somewhere, the easiest thing we can do is generalize PTSD. We can generalize trauma. We can generalize stress. We can generalize stabilizing your nervous system. The only way that I have learned how to stabilize the nervous system for the last 15 years of my search has been the emotions via emotional impulses. And I've learned that to do with affect labeling. And the other thing is getting to the felt sense of the body.
Hmm.
Other than that, it's snake oil
Hmm.
for now. Now I'm not saying that EMDR couldn't work for somebody because I'm not a doctor, right? So I'm not
Right.
prescribing anything. But what I am saying is Possibly just going and getting a massage could help some of these people. Going and getting some myofascial release. Going and Brian Tuckey does this thing called fascial counter strain. He's out of California, and the number 2 counter strain person in the world is a massage therapist. So, really quick, what these individuals found when they're going on disaster sites and they're working with first responders, especially when they were out in Florida for that last hurricane, that really, really bad one.
On the West Coast, sure.
Yeah, that was, or on the East Coast, that was where they had the. I'm not talking recent. I'm talking a couple years ago. Fort Myers and all that
Yeah.
was impacted. The DMORT teams actually became the funeral directors. So they had so many DMORT teams that were taken away and put on projects that they actually had they called in the funeral directors, and they called to go and identify and pull people out of the ocean. So I mean, you walk into a situation like that, it's crazy. It's a crisis, right? They had massage chairs on site for these first responders. You probably know because
Yeah,
you're
well, and it's funny. Usually at all the conferences, there's always a massage chair room, and
Mhm.
that's always staffed during these conferences.
Okay. So with stuff like that, okay, doing it out in public, it's really, really difficult. You get someone that's been working, 20 hours straight for the last 6 days. They might not give a shit. They might just sit in a chair and be able to release and let themselves go. But those expos or those psychological expos where they're saying, hey, do this with your breath, or hey, do this with your feet, or hey, do this, do this. It doesn't work because you don't have congruence. Do you know what that means?
In it of itself, it's not going to be effective. It needs to be part of a more, I wouldn't even say elaborate, but a more intentional plan. No.
Exactly. It has to be an intentional connection with the person that you're working with, and you're showing them or you're providing them a service,
Hmm.
right? Congruence comes when the person providing the service is in tune and they're connected with how they're feeling and where their thoughts are going and where their focus is. If they're not present in the moment and they're dysregulated or they're overstressed,
Hmm.
shit doesn't work on the person that you're trying to do it with.
Yeah, that makes sense. That
So
makes sense. Yeah.
that's a big cautionary tale. But the bottom line is, I think hope has been taken away underneath. Like, should I be a victim? Shouldn't I be a victim? Is this stress? Do we call this stress? Is this chronic? Like, what is this? What is this job? I can't answer that for you. But what I can answer is, if you want to do the job to the best of your abilities and then come home and be the dad and be the husband, and I'm not perfect. I still yell. I still have my frustrating moments. I still have things because I'm a man, right?
Yeah. Well, life's a work in progress.
Life is a work in progress.
Yeah.
But if there's anything I can say lastly is what I've learned, John, is not about what I've learned. It's that it's the truth beyond the bullshit. And that's the hope that I want people to learn because it keeps them alive. They don't give
Yeah.
up.
No doubt. Yeah, there's a lot of noise out there. It's nice to speak with somebody that can help filter through it.
Likewise. I mean,
Yeah.
look at your book. The five languages of love. That's brilliant, John. The fact that you're able to understand your wife's love language and you to understand your love language and to teach the first responder community about the
Yeah.
languages of love.
No,
Brilliant.
Dr. Gary Chapman. Good stuff,
Yeah.
man. Well, I want you to send me, we talked about so many things. I want you to, if you could, man,
Yeah.
send me off some of those doctors
Yeah, sure.
and some of their works, and I'll put all that information in the show notes. Jay Gruben, thank you so much for taking the time, man. This was an awesome conversation. And man, if you're driving around, there's no reason for you not to take a look, dip your toe in the water, start implementing things that can add value to your life, and understand that, we didn't get messed up overnight, so we're not going to get fixed overnight. It's a process. And I appreciate you for taking the time, Jay.
John, I appreciate you. I appreciate the invite. And, any of your brothers, any of your people want me to speak on this further, I'm just getting started. So I would absolutely love the opportunity to be on a podcast again, or just to have further conversations. I'm here for any questions for anybody.
Perfect. I'll make some introductions for you as well.
Appreciate you.
And that is that, Jay.